Lindsey Kirkendall. How are you?
I'm good. A little tired.
Excellent.
Excited to be here.
No, I get it. It's been a wild day. Been a wild day.
Been a wild day and it's not done yet.
Yeah. I appreciate you coming on, being willing to share your story with the creative community, because I think from what I've read so far and heard so far from you being on our friends Dwight and Maddox's podcast, For the Love of Creatives, it's very broad and in-depth perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I like that. I like that you said it was both broad and in depth because that is true. It's both sides of the same coin.
exactly. Exactly. Let me give the audience a brief introduction here for you, just so they get a feel for who you are, some of the things you've done, and we'll dive into the conversation after that. You are the founder and CEO of Revolution, a business consultancy helping musicians and artists build sustainable, scalable, and profitable businesses by identifying non-traditional revenue streams and growing market share. With reach as a featured speaker at national conferences and educator at universities nationwide. You are also the co founder and VP of Storyteller Media, leading marketing, sales, digital infrastructure, and strategic partnerships across the Tampa metro area. Following your brand's relaunch after its 10-year Nashville tenure, you have a 15 plus year career spanning B2B and B2C sales, national radio promotion, business consulting, entrepreneurship, and entertainment production, including on camera talent and production roles for CMT and MTV. And as a hypnotherapist, you're currently working towards certification as a master level clinical hypnotherapist through the rapid resolution therapy and the Connolly method. You're also educated from Cal State University, Long Beach, in sociology and music. With your, did you major in music or minor in music?
It was a minor. Yeah.
Okay, right on. So I only have one structured question
Love it.
for every one of these interviews, and that was, where were you born and what was life like as a kid for Lindsey?
It's a good one. I was born in Whittier, California.
Okay.
And so it's, if people aren't familiar with California geography, it's East LA County, right on the border of Orange County and LA County where they meet. So I was born in Whittier, but I grew up on the Orange County side. So I grew up very close to Disneyland actually. And I mean, close enough that you could see the fireworks, if you looked in the right direction every night at like, yeah. So life as a child, that is such a loaded question because my brain immediately goes, like, which direction do I want to take that in? Life, I would say the overarching theme of my childhood was very lonely. So dynamics that existed for me when I came onto the scene was that I was the product of my dad's first marriage and my mom's second marriage. So my dad, my biological dad, I say it like I have more than one. I don't. I've never had a stepdad or anything like that, but my dad was my mom's second marriage. So when she and my dad got together, she already had my brother and sister from her first marriage. And when she had me, uh, my brother and sister were 13 and 14. So by the time I was in kindergarten, they were going to college. My mom was kind of a maverick. She had me in the 80s at 40, which like most women were like clutching their pearls about, like, you don't do that in the 80s, you know. And I grew up in a deeply religious Southern Baptist household.
Uh,
And I didn't know that that was weird until I moved to the South, Nashville, and people were like, "You were Southern Baptist in Southern California?" And I was like, I didn't know that was a weird thing, but that was the environment. And so I didn't have siblings my own age. And because I was also the baby by 13 years, all of like the cousins that I grew up near were also significantly older. And then on my dad's side, I only had two that lived in state and due to family dynamics, I didn't see them much.
Mm.
Just had this very enduring sense of loneliness, and I understand a lot of that now, being an adult and looking back over why were things the way they were. I think a lot of that had to do with my mom being in a season of life where she was in a now second difficult marriage, raising teenagers and having a baby. And there was a lot of unintentional emotional absence. Are you familiar with the blank face experiment?
I'm not, but it sounds fascinating.
I want to say that it was Stanford, but I don't remember the college that performed this experiment, but they had a number of mothers and babies come in, and the mom's engaging with the baby. And these were like, I don't know, between like 9 to 18 month olds, so young.
Okay. Yeah.
And the mom would be engaging with the baby, and then all of a sudden the mom would just go like this and
Mm.
refuse to reciprocate for a period of time. And they would watch how consistently every single baby would start to get high anxiety, and start to make a play for like, mom, where'd you go? You know what I mean? So it was a really interesting commentary on attachment. And when I saw that for the first time, I was like, oh, that's what was going on, and without getting into the weeds of like all of my parents' dysfunctional stuff, that was the season of life she found herself in when I was born.
Right.
Just was struggling to be present. And I don't know that she was even aware that she wasn't, but I think there was also a mismatch between her ability to be present and me having a much deeper well for attention.
Yeah.
I am I see this a lot in my youngest son, and I'm like, oh, this is just a kid that needs a greater degree of one-to-one uh,
Yeah.
interaction and presence and attunement. And that was not something that I got. My parents' relationship was also very chaotic and kind of angry and volatile. And then there was a lot of like religious themes that were happening that I was trying to sift through as a child. And
Yeah.
went through a period of really, really intense shyness when I was younger. And then my parents ultimately divorced when I was 8.
Oh,
At
wow.
that point, my sister had found herself pregnant and was going to school on a vocal scholarship. She's an amazing vocalist, and she was in school at a Christian college on a vocal scholarship and wound up pregnant.
Yeah.
So I was 7 years old when I became an aunt, and that was thrilling for me because I was like, finally, I get someone that's going to be my own age. And I'm really excited actually because after we do this podcast, I'm actually going over to the airport to pick up my niece and her, we call them Beyonce because they're about at that point, but
Okay.
flying in to visit me tonight for a few days. So,
Very
uh,
cool.
yeah, so we had a new baby on the scene, and my sister was a single parent at 20, 21. And my mom and my dad, over the course of the next year, decided to divorce. And my mom and I moved an hour away, had to go to a new school, all the things, because she was now a single mom and couldn't afford to live in Orange County anymore.
Yeah.
That was pretty traumatic. I think more than even the divorce was like moving out of my surroundings and having to move schools and do that sort of thing. But I'm also very resilient and adaptable, and I adapted. And so, life from there was wild. I mean, it was just like it was normal. You know,
Hmm.
school, I did the things, I participated in the activities. I loved athletics, and I was a gymnast and a cheerleader and loved being physical, and I loved music and I loved singing and was still singing at church and doing some of those types of things. And I was in my middle school musicals and just loved being on stage and knew I really wanted to perform. I was very one track mind about that. But growing up with really religious parents and growing up in Southern California, they had an attitude about, I don't know, Christian daughter of mine is going to be in that industry. And that was hard because then there was a significant gap between my ability to access what I wanted to and the scaffolding and support that I needed to
Yeah.
achieve that. And that's not to say that my mom didn't, because by the time I was 14, she'd helped me get an agent. And, throughout my high school experience, I was auditioning in LA and I was landing some commercials. And, she'd pick me up from school early and haul me into LA all through the traffic and do the thing. Wasn't happy about it. And she made it very clear, but she still did it. So there was this kind of weird dynamic of, well, you're doing it, so like you do support me, but the whole time you're like not into it.
Right. Exactly. Holy cow.
How do you read that?
Yeah.
And I yeah, so I had a really great high school experience for the most part. It was a pretty typical like middle America high school experience. And yeah, I mean that I'm not going to get into college because you said what was life like as a child growing up. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so that
So just some relatable scenarios for you from my perspective. I, myself and my younger sister are a product of both my parents' second marriage. So
yeah.
my dad had a daughter in his first marriage. My mom didn't,
Yeah.
but my dad had a daughter, and she was um, 7 years older than me.
Mhm.
And we had this conversation before we got on the podcast, but all my family is from East Tennessee. So she lived with her mom all the time. And we were in Michigan because my parents had come up here because my dad was an auto mechanic, and with the auto industry in the 60s,
Oh, yeah.
um, it was ample work. So that's why they moved up here. So I was essentially an only child, so to speak, for 9 years before my little sister came along.
Yeah, so you get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, too, my grandfather, my mom's father, was a Southern Baptist minister.
Wow.
So during the week, he worked on the farm, did all of his farm stuff. And then on the weekend, it was church. Saturday nights was church at some other,
Day night too?
somebody, yeah, somebody else's as well. And that'll come into play a little bit later on as an interesting point of irony. But once I hit at the end of third grade, I was offered the opportunity to go into a gifted class for creative students. And what would happen is you would go in the afternoons from your elementary school over to the high school and be able to do like art stuff and swim in the pool and play basketball, all those kind of things.
You mind if I ask, were you in public school at the time?
I was at that point, and this is the switch point as well. My parents decided to put me into a fundamental Baptist Christian school at fourth grade. And it was a ACE school, which for those that may not understand what that is, it's accelerated Christian education. So you're given 12 little booklets that you have to finish per grade level. So it's kind of a work at your own pace type situation. And also, too, the school was K through 12. So I was in fourth grade in the same room as the 12th graders.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like one-room schoolhouse.
Yes, exactly. So wild dynamic. So I understand the whole perspective of that Christianity mentality, what the standards are, quote unquote, and the way you're supposed to move and operate throughout the world, that kind of stuff. So already lining up with major connections here.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the things that I'm curious about is in elementary school, your parents got divorced at 8. Prior to that, were you one of those students that would sit towards the back of the class, or were you comfortable being up front, answering questions, connecting with the teachers?
I was comfortable being up front, but it wasn't something that I was known for. I mean, I wasn't the Hermione of the group. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the one that was always like, "Oh, pick me. I have all the answers. I'm the straight A student." School came very easily to me. Uh,
Okay.
and I do it's interesting because and it's sometimes so hard to say stuff like this because I know there's still a lot of stigma around just acknowledging like a level of giftedness.
Right.
Because some people are like, and then some people that really do understand what it is, it's not what I think everybody it has been led to believe that it is.
Yeah.
I was in a Christian school from K through fifth.
Okay.
So obviously the school system is different because they don't do those screeners that they do in public school in second grade to see who's eligible for the gifted programs. It's a Christian school
Right.
independent. They're not doing that, but
Yeah.
have accelerated learning for students to some degree. And I do believe that if I were in a public school scenario, I would have been in the gifted program because I was in some of those pull-out groups because I was achieving at a higher level than I guess the average kid. And I always, school always came very easily to me, but understanding how my brain works now and hindsight 2020, I'm like, oh, that's why there was a lot of it that I just didn't give a crap about. It came easy enough that I was getting good grades, but I wasn't deeply engaged in the material because it wasn't interesting to me, which I'm sure knowing that you were a gifted kid as well, like you totally get that dynamic. Like it's a very interest driven brain wiring.
Yeah.
And so because of that, and especially in the 80s and 90s when I was in school, intelligence was really looked at through the lens of grades and academic success.
Yeah.
Wasn't, I mean, unless you were like doing an IQ test and then people, but even then, like it's still, there was a high emphasis on academics in a different way. I'm totally going off on a garden path, but
That's all right. I'll
I'm
wheel you back around.
not sure that that even answered the question because I went somewhere else with it. But, um, But yeah, I mean, I was not interested in being in the front of the classroom because I also had a part of my brain that was hyper aware of how I was perceived.
Mm,
And I am someone that tends to observe situations and then identify where I fit in,
yeah.
and then navigate that through that pathway. And so I wasn't a flunky because like school came easy and I wanted to do well. It said something about me. But I also there was enough of it that I didn't care about that I wasn't in the front of the classroom. But was I comfortable there? Sure. But really fell somewhere in the middle, which
Yeah.
truthfully, with most things as it relates to me, I fall somewhere in the middle because I can kind of play both sides in a lot
Mm,
in life.
yeah. Are you familiar with human design at all?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. I've found this doctor recently who has a website that's quantum human design.
Ooh, is
And I put my information into there and it spit back out that I'm a manifesting generator.
that the gene keys?
Yes.
Yes,
Yep.
I love gene keys.
Yep. So she breaks this down even further.
Yeah.
That's why I found it much more interesting because as a manifesting generator, she categorized my personality design as a time bender, meaning that I don't follow the standard process of everything. Us- You may be given a process and you have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps, right? My brain goes 1, 2, jumps to 5 and 6, skips 3 and 4 because it's like that doesn't even need to take place.
Yeah, you're collapsing time.
Yeah. So I totally understand that that brain that is not interested in exactly everything that's in front of you
Yeah.
because it's not all important the way our brains work.
Yeah, I bet you would also say your experience is similar to like if you're given too much linear information, you actually don't process it the same way as if you're given the whole context first, right?
Yeah.
Like your that's how I am too. I'm like, I don't give me one step at a time. Show me what it looks like when it's done
Yeah.
and reverse engineer it,
Yep.
and then when it's necessary to go through the steps to make what I've just seen make sense. But like I got to see the whole picture
Yes.
first.
Yep, exactly. And that is something that I've been able to do even with clients that I work with for branding projects or music projects or whatever. once I sit down with them and start getting that information, I automatically already see the big picture of what their possibilities can be
Yeah,
and start re-engineering it backwards to where they're at.
absolutely.
Makes complete sense.
Yep.
With that transition at 8 to another city and town as well, and I'm assuming potentially another school,
Yeah.
how was that for you in terms of trying to start to reintegrate within a new environment on top of the fact that now your parents are not in the same household?
Yeah. It's funny. I don't really have a lot of memories of the transition period being challenging to
Okay.
people. What was challenging at the time was my relationship with my mother. Was that after the divorce, I mean, I think it was a little contentious even before their divorce.
Hmm.
8 years old, but post 8 years old, it got really, really bad and stayed really bad until I left the state of California, quite frankly.
Mm,
And I love my mom. Like, she's coming to visit me next month, but like, she simply did not have, nor did like us socially and culturally, did we have the skills to deal with neurodivergent children in the
yeah.
80s, 90s. They had no idea what was going on. And so a lot of it was viewed through like a trauma lens, which sure, that is true. Some of that is definitely true, but it was complicated by the fact that I was definitely neurodivergent and no one knew because I didn't look like what people thought that looked like back then.
Yeah.
So I would say, and this is an interesting thing that I've learned as I've studied a lot about neurodivergence, particularly in women, and why it's not often caught is that we're just because of the fact that we're women, we are more socially inclined,
Mm,
just more adept at fitting in because we are driven by social things in a way that boys typically aren't.
right.
And so for me, the transition to the school, it's funny because I do have lots of pictures of my first day of fourth grade, and I'm like this in all of them because I'm pissed. I don't want to be here. You took me out of my school. You took me out of my 4-bedroom home with a pool in Orange County. And now I'm in a dingy 2-bedroom apartment in a shithole town an hour away. Like, I was just like, you just upended my life. And now you're trying to take happy first day of school pictures. And I was sad. I was grieving, as a
Yeah.
9-year old, 8-year old, 9-year old little girl.
Right.
But beyond that, I made friends quickly because again, like I'm a socially inclined girl and I enjoy friendships and social activities and things and I am very adaptable and resilient. So for those reasons, the actual transition to the new school wasn't particularly challenging for me, although it wasn't a walk in the park,
Yeah.
obviously. Looked at my
Yeah.
first day of school pictures. But to answer your question, I mean, I was able to find friends quick and in
Okay.
yeah.
What type of work were your parents doing at that point in time?
So my dad he had his bachelor's as a mechanical engineer and an MBA. And at the time, the other thing, this is another just funny random story that again, now knowing what I know and looking back, I'm like, oh, yeah, my dad's fully on the spectrum and
I was
all
about to say.
brilliant, high
Yeah.
IQ, lots of issues with emotional restraint.
Mm,
And not so much anymore, but like when he was married to my mom when he was a younger man, a lot of emotional volatility. And he really struggled to keep a job. You know,
mm,
someone
okay.
mechanical engineer and an MBA,
Yeah.
he really struggled to keep a job. And I do now understand that because I have had my own struggles in the corporate world. And I'm like, oh, it can be hard for neurodivergent people to fit into the corporate structures and not push back against things and not even realize that they're pushing back against things. They're just like, why are we doing it this way? This doesn't make sense. Like, can you
Right.
please be clear? And people are like, why are you such a dick?
Yeah, exactly.
Or
Exactly.
not exposing me, like we all like follow along this like corporate unspoken set of rules, and you're over here being like, wait, I need to know why you're doing, like there's just we expose too much. uh,
Right.
so at the time, I'm not really sure what he was doing for a job. I mean, he was working in various corporate in
Setting.
environments. He was doing some general management work for a number of different companies. One was a wood turning manufacturer. He was the GM, and then he was the GM of a chemicals manufacturer. So different.
Yeah.
And my mom, she had her degree in early childhood education, and so she was a preschool teacher for a little while when my parents were still married. And then she went back to that as one of her jobs after they split up because for the first like year or two after they split up, she was working three jobs. So she
Yeah.
was doing that. And then she was going back to school to some degree to get a teaching credential so she could get like a better paying gig in the school system. But she was in education.
Got you. How about your grandparents? Were your grandparents around when you were young?
Not really, actually.
Okay.
Dad left her family when she was 2, and he passed when I was 6, and I believe only met me once when I was a baby.
Oh, wow.
My dad's mother had passed 2 years prior to my birth, so I only knew my maternal grandma and my paternal grandpa.
Okay.
And my maternal grandmother passed when I was 11. So even
Mm,
from that standpoint, like I really didn't have a lot of nuclear family members that were around. So again, going back to the theme of feeling lonely and trying
yeah,
where I belong, there just wasn't a lot of people around.
for sure. For sure. And from your brother and sister, were they so much older that it was kind of like maybe an annoyance to them in a way that you were around, or did you feel some love from them?
Oh, they were definitely my safe place. Yeah.
Okay.
They they were the only people I was close to growing up where I did feel completely at ease with them and
Oh,
safe. But again, they were in college by the time I was 5, and so I don't know that annoyance is quite the right note to hit, but
sure.
they were going into their adult lives and
Yeah.
saw me when they saw me. And my sister and I are much closer than my brother and I because she lived with us, when she had my niece, and
Yeah.
she just stuck closer to our world. And when she ended up getting married when my niece was 2, she married a man who was living kind of in the same area that my mom and I were at the time. So she was just much more nearby, whereas my brother went to college, got a job, and he stayed in LA County. It's
Mm,
to this day, So
okay.
we were always about an hour away from each other, which didn't make seeing each other regularly super easy. And so for that reason, we were less close. But yeah, it was just kind of like a product of circumstance, really, because of the sort
Yeah.
of life that we were in.
Yeah, I totally get it. Every time we would go to Tennessee, the way that the custody was set up, my dad would always get custody as soon as he got in the state. So we would go pick up my sister. I always considered her just my sister, and never looked at it from the half sister perspective. And I was always drawn to being around her,
Mhm.
like that early on, that safe space scenario. Like I intrinsically understand that because I felt so comfortable when I was around her or with her. Like I always wanted to be next to her. Sometimes probably to the point of aggravating her because she would pinch me every now and then, and I'd be like, "Why are you doing that?"
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally get that. That stretch of years between siblings, it's a lot to try to come back to and connect
Yeah.
because they're so it's almost like there's different decades
Oh,
that are
yeah.
at play.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about the fact that my siblings graduated high school in the 80s and I graduated high school in 2001, I mean,
Yeah.
really different worlds.
Yep.
And yet, I'm curious if you have had this experience as well with your sister, but my sister and I are a lot alike. We're a lot different too, but there's a lot of similarities that there's still a simpatico, if you
Yeah.
will, around each other. And so it's easeful. And when I visit California, I'm always at their place,
Yep.
more often than I'm at my brother's.
Yeah. It was always that scenario. Once we were together, picked up like we left off, kind of a thing. She's got a creative flair in her. So that side of it was a connection point. And then, by the time I was, I'd say getting around 11, 12, she was about to get engaged and married.
Yeah.
She got married early, right out of high school. So it was, again, same type of scenario where just that amount of time between us turned into a little bit more of a stretch of connection the older that they got.
Yeah. Are you guys closer now? Do you feel like now that you're both adults?
I would say that we're probably is still looks as close. We don't talk as often, and I don't get to see her as often because I don't travel down there that much anymore. The older that you get, cousins and aunts and uncles start dying off, and the trips get farther and fewer between.
Yeah.
And from that perspective, my dad was one of 11.
Whoa.
Yeah. And his family, my mom was one of four in
Yeah.
her family. So that's
A lot of
fif-
family.
15 aunts and uncles right there. And then you throw in cousins on top of that. So it was quite a bit. So it was always, for me, it was always a bit strange trying to engage with everybody because we were away from them so much during the year. But it did still always feel like home from that perspective of it literally being the family. I probably felt more at home too with my mom's side of the family, with my Southern Baptist minister grandfather. I was on his heels every time I could, because he was out working at the barn.
Loving Southern Baptist minister.
Yes.
Not the typical story. So you're very blessed in that way.
Yes, very much so. And that, later on in the conversation, I'll bring that up as to how much of that connection stayed intact, even to this day. Moving into middle school, in the environment that you were set in, was that a starting point for you to start experiencing the creative elements of your side?
It was there before. I mean, I was in school plays and church stuff, singing
Yeah.
and stuff through church and school, both prior to middle school. But I think this is funny. One of the bright sides of my parents' divorce is that I got to do the things that I always wanted to do in a lot of ways because I was a born dancer, man. And I
Okay.
will, like, at 42, have so much energy in my body. Like, I'm constantly moving. Like, even while I'm sitting here, I'm crossing and uncrossing my legs. I'm cracking my knuckles. I'm doing all the things. Uh,
Yeah.
and I don't know that that was even something that people knew to notice in the 80s,
Okay.
that little
Sure.
girl. I
Yeah.
really, really wanted to dance. I really wanted to be in ballet, but Southern Baptists, I don't know if you know this, they don't dance.
Yeah, exactly.
And my dad's mom was the daughter of a Southern Baptist minister. So
Mm,
he had a lot of that in him.
yeah.
And my mom was like, that's bizarre, but she didn't fight it. So post divorce, I got to take dance.
Okay.
That whole world opened up for me. So that happened about fourth grade, but on into middle school was when, I'd been doing it for several years. I was obviously very good at it. And then I tried out for my middle school cheer team and made that team and got just more and more opportunities to perform and use my body athletically that I hadn't in the past. And so it was just kind of like it just built, it was
Yeah.
bricks on a wall. And then we had an amazing musical theater teacher my eighth grade year. And at that point, I was competitive. I was a competitive gymnast. I was also cheerleading for my school. And I was in Annie, in our musical theater production of Annie. And it was the time of my life. I mean, I was busier than ever. My mom probably hated it.
Yeah.
And I was freaking loving life. So it really was like just a crescendo, if you will, of getting to have more and more access.
Yeah.
Just further developed a deeper and deeper love of it.
And this is around the same time you said that you were starting to get auditions as well?
That happened in high school.
Okay, high school.
Yeah, I got an agent when I was a freshman or sophomore.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Gymnastics is a very disciplined and kind of hard coached athletic.
Mhm.
How did that affect you from a mental standpoint? That extra.
I loved it. I was
Okay.
obsessed. When I was 12, that was when the 96 Olympics happened
Yeah.
in Atlanta, and the girls won the gold, and Carrie Strug landed that vault on one foot, and it was the vault heard around the world.
Yeah.
I was like, this is it for me. I'm going to be, to the degree that in eighth grade, I would sign my math homework, Lindsey Carpenter, Sydney 2000. I mean, I really did not have any concept of the fact that I was not going to bridge into an Olympic gymnastics career in 4 years, nor am I I have a dancer's body, not a gymnast body. I am far too tall for the sport, and I learned that really fast. But I wished I could have had better coaching. Again, we were in a small town and my access was really limited. And
Okay.
although I was on a competitive team and I was getting to experience competitive gymnastics, I was not with a facility or a gym that had a storied legacy of it was like really recreational. And
Gotcha.
and I would have loved to have had harder coaching. But everything I got, I felt like they were hard-won fights because getting an agent, I was like flipping through the phone book trying to figure out, and I would just my mom would say I'd beg her and beg her and beg her and manipulate her, all the really unkind terms she would use, but then she'd give in and she's like, okay, like I guess we're getting you an agent. Same thing with gymnastics. I'm like, I need to be better. I need better coaching. Like, take me to the bigger gym in 40 minutes away. And so we would do some of that. And then when I saw my dad on weekends, I found other gyms that were in Orange County and like somehow convinced my parents to let me take private lessons from time to time. And, so I was like a dog with a bone with
Yeah.
yeah, and really had to like forge my own path because my parents were not the type of parents that had I don't know if I want to say they had no interest in it, but I just don't know that they knew to do more for me and help
Mm.
scaffold some of those things beyond what school was doing.
Right.
And I don't know, you can tell me how you feel about this, but I feel like our parents' era, their mentality was just kind of like, I am outsourcing your ability to adult to school. I don't really need to teach you anything. I don't need to help support your dreams. Like, sure, I'll take you to the soccer game on Saturday because, like, that's just what we do.
Yeah.
But, like, school will handle it. And when you come out the other side of this academic environment, you're going to know how to adult.
Yeah.
And obviously that didn't work.
Nope.
So that was my experience. I just don't think that our parents knew to do that.
So would you, from that perspective, would you consider yourself an achiever and almost absolutely in that first child framework?
Oh, that's a good way of putting it. I don't know because I've always very much considered myself the baby of the family.
Right.
I'm the
Yeah.
feisty little rascal that gets what it wants. But yeah, on the flip side of that coin, I guess that's true. I'd never considered that.
Yeah.
If you like human design, you probably also have spent time in the Enneagram.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm a 3, which
Okay.
with a 4 wing.
Got it.
Interestingly, if I take Enneagram quizzes where it shows how you score across all 9 types, I'm usually even in 3 and 4.
Okay.
But yeah, there's definitely an achiever thread happening.
I get it. If I'm remembering correctly, I'm a 5 with a 4 wing, or it's the vice versa, 4 with a 5 wing.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what it is in the moment. But yeah, that's what I'm saying from you, that even though you technically are the third child, you have those first child characteristics that are in play there, which is it's fascinating early on in your childhood, along with everything that you've talked about with your intellect at that point, the things that you're drawn to, the things that are interesting for you. all of those types of things. Starting going on the auditions, did you start to see that as potentially your opportunity of expanding beyond the theater and aspects there?
It's a really good question. I think, again, this goes back to I wish there was more scaffolding from my,
Right.
because I think I would have really preferred theater over film and television. But
Okay.
I didn't have anyone wanting to sit down and have those conversations and get inside my mind and ask me what I thought about it and why I was motivated towards it and help me self-analyze a little bit or critically think about
Yeah.
what I was wanting. And I think theater really felt as I got into college, and I really started to have more opportunity to do musical theater at a collegiate level. I really, really loved it. And I really felt like at that point I was behind the curve in terms of my experience level compared to other kids that had been doing it in community theater their whole lives. And I think again, it was just kind of like a product of circumstance being someone that grew up in Southern California. I just assumed that that was the next step if I wanted to continue to perform because I really had no idea how to access the theater. I mean, maybe if I had grown up in New York City, it would have been the other way around.
Yeah.
Was really left to my own devices in a lot of ways. And so I really just was flying blind and making decisions based on the context that I had at the time. And I think my context was LA. And so
Yeah.
that's how that evolved.
Did you have other classmates that had agents as well that you were able to connect with, or do they see you differently now that you've had an agent?
It wasn't something I talked about.
Okay.
A close friend who was very supportive. And when I found out I got an agent, I told her, and she was really excited for me, and that was nice. But as I mentioned earlier, I also am hyper aware of how I'm perceived to a fault, I think, to a distractionable degree. And I get that I have a skin suit that people find conventionally attractive. It is what it is. And I also get that people assume things about pretty girls who want to be on TV. And I didn't want to be categorized that way in people's
Sure.
so I really didn't talk about it much. My high school boyfriend knew, and eventually I did land a national commercial for Energizer battery my junior year. I think it was like tail end of my junior year, and it was airing my senior year. And so people were seeing it at that point.
Okay.
But at that point, it was just kind of something that I did, and it wasn't, I think I felt more comfortable about it just because I was older and I had a good group of friends. And I would have been through 4 years with these people, and these people largely knew who I was. And I didn't
Yeah.
have to worry so much about how I was perceived. Just kind of a fun thing, people be like, "Oh, I saw a commercial last night." And that was okay. It didn't really have a, a highly positive or highly negative impact one way or the other, thankfully, because that can be for people.
For sure. For sure. That's why I was curious. That's why I was curious. Do you think maybe some of the athletic stuff that you were doing maybe masked a little bit of that quote unquote Hollywood kid actor, actress type scenario?
A good question. I could have been just a little bit ignorant to some of it, but I mean, I was a cheerleader.
Yeah.
Not like I was running track.
Okay.
I was a softball player, although I did want to play softball, but my mom was like, "Listen, I only have so much time. You can't do all of the things." But, I think a lot of it is, and of course, I always go back to like this because this is just such a prominent theme in my life now, but better understanding my neurodivergence now helps me understand how I was experiencing life and why I may have experienced things in ways where I was completely oblivious to certain other realities. But the cheerleading thing, for example, part of the reason I was doing it was just because I really love to tumble. I really love gymnastics. I would have stayed with gymnastics, but I'm 5'5.5". That's like giant for a gymnast that wants to get beyond a level 6. It makes the sport incredibly challenging to be competitive at. But I still wanted that athletic outlet. And cheerleading was like the next closest thing that I had enough experience with that I could continue to still access some of those gymnastics-like qualities.
Yeah.
I wasn't cheering because I cared about football. I wasn't cheering because like I wanted to wear the cute little outfit. Like, sure, like socially it had some benefit, but that wasn't the motivation. It was just because I loved to tumble and I loved to play, be in athletic environments and be on a
Right.
um, so, that being said, it's kind of funny because like I that in my mind was how I felt about it. So I think I probably assumed everyone else knew that about me too. Even though they probably were just like, she's the cheerleader. Maybe they were perceiving me that way. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wasn't perceiving myself that way, but I was also on yearbook staff too. So that I think maybe more than
Okay.
athletics was kind of my like, nerdy. I'm the senior editor, and I
Right.
loved it. I was a pretty well-rounded kid, I guess you would say, observably. So I think on some level, all of those things worked out. And I think ultimately too, I'm really nerdy. I am deeply nerdy and obviously very animated. I don't find myself to be particularly intimidating. I'm like, I'll make all the faces. I mean, I think my paper plate award one year was like woman of many faces. That's literally what they at the end of this at the yearbook banquet or whatever it was, because I'm
Yeah.
constantly making faces. And so I think that personality dynamic also tempered the cheerleader actress. Like I didn't come across, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that had a lot to do with it too. And it wasn't just the athletics.
And also being on the yearbook staff, that's a whole different frame of way of thinking from a creative standpoint. And did you say you were the editor?
I was the editor of the senior section my senior year. So I was on the layouts
Okay. Got you. Okay.
second
So
year.
yeah, even from that perspective, like you're having to analyze what's going to look good
Mhm.
and how to put it together. So that combined with all of the other elements that we've talked about so far just turns the gem in another direction to see another facet.
Yeah.
That's fascinating for me because for the creative community that's listening to this, it just shows that you don't always have to be one-sided as a creative and with your creative endeavors, which that played out in your intro that I gave you there. And we'll get more into that as we go along. But sometimes creatives get caught in this mold of thinking, I can only do this and it's only going to apply to this one lane. When in reality, if you just turn the view slightly,
Yeah.
you can see that it can span out across many lanes.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I completely agree. And I think that it's also a very divergent way of thinking because you can see all the connections, right? You can see,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. As you're getting towards that end of the senior year in high school, are you starting to think about going off to college or are you thinking, I may just try to step into a career right away?
Oh man, it's interesting that this is a very prominent conversation in my house right now because my oldest son is about to go to high school next year. So he's going to be a
Okay.
year and he's highly academic. He fits very easily into an academic environment. And we, I would say a 70 to 80% of my boys' education has been some sort of homeschool hybrid. I've never homeschooled 5 days a week. They would go to like a tutorial 3 days a week and two at home.
Okay.
Homeschool heavy dynamic in our house. And now we're looking at, okay, college, and I'm sure you would agree, college shifted rapidly when we were entering college
Oh, yeah.
because it just was less relevant than ever. And yet we were all parented by a generation where college meant a good job and a good income or the opposite. No, none of our parents could have predicted the technological revolution that was about to befall us going into adulthood and how that was going to shift how valuable a college degree was.
Yeah.
So anyway, we've been having this conversation in my house too, because we're like, like, what is the value of college these days? Because, and for what kind of kid, right? My son is really, really interested in weather science and tornadoes specifically. And it's like, look, if
Mm,
you want to be a meteorologist, if you want to study weather science, like, you don't fall into that. Like, that is something that you kind of do have to go get a specialized
yeah.
study for. So college would make sense. Now, my younger son, all business, all entrepreneurship, may or may not go to college. Like, he can do what he wants to, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
So for me, as I mentioned, we were parented by a generation who college was like a non-negotiable. And what's more is our parents' generation, I don't know if your parents felt like this, they felt they had to pay for the whole damn thing. Like,
Mine weren't. They did it.
understand. Listen, there's a thing called scholarships. Support your kid in figuring that out. There's a thing called work study, which my mom was supportive of that, but
Yeah.
my mom vehemently opposed to student loans, vehemently, which I appreciate for a lot of reasons. She's
Yeah.
like, no student should graduate their adult lives in debt. Philosophically, I totally align with. But at the same time, it really limited what
Opportunity.
opportunities really were and what my
Yeah.
parents were willing to support me in trying to access.
Hmm.
It was like, you're going to a state school because that's what we can afford. And so I think I kind of always, when you hit junior year and you're starting to have to actually think about college and do the things to select the pathway,
Yeah.
I think I already kind of knew like my pathway was chosen for me. And therefore, in some ways, like applying myself at a level that I do believe I was capable of was less relevant and I didn't have the motivation. And I do look back on that and really feel a level of grief that I was usually seen as the pretty cheerleader that was smart enough and good enough, but I wasn't really seen for my intellect at all.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, like that, I, this would go in so many different directions. But, like when you get to a point where you start to see aging happening and you're used to the world valuing you for something that you didn't choose, like the way you look,
Yeah.
and you start to see that start to fade, you really do go, wow, like I really didn't get supported in ways that valued who I am, how I look or present.
Yeah.
So there is a level of grief there of like, I missed out on opportunities where I could have really stretched myself and really tried some different things that maybe, I still would have always ended up in the performance and entertainment and art space for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a level of grief for everyone who feels that they never were able to fully express in an area that they know themselves to be capable and competent in, but they just didn't
Yeah.
have. So, to your question, yes, like I was starting to think about college, but it was in a lot of ways a foregone conclusion. And I kind of went through the steps like while other, kids were applying to fancy colleges, I applied to 4 California state schools just to like have options, I guess, got all of them, like whoopity doo Basil, like no big deal. So yeah, I mean, and my college experience wasn't great. It was actually really shit.
Okay. Did you, uh, was it close enough for you to stay home or did you have to stay on campus?
Well, neither. Um,
Okay.
I so if you're not from California, so you wouldn't know this, but people that are listening that happen to be from California would know the California State University system over the years had funding problems. And so I ended up at California State University of Long Beach, and they had a very, very limited amount of dorms. And for whatever reason, there was a huge influx of freshmen my year, and the dorms went on a lottery system, and I was hundreds down the line.
Oh, wow.
And in California, if you are smart enough to test into to school at 4, you can start kindergarten at 4 as long as you turn 5 by December. Well, my birthday's in November, so I started kindergarten at 4, which meant I started college at 17, which
Yeah.
I'm sure my parents thought that was so proud. But I'm like, you should have given me another year. Like 17,
Right.
even for someone who's smart and capable, is still so young. And
Yes.
I didn't get a dorm, but I did make my college cheer team.
Okay.
So my mom somehow coordinated a connection to another girl that had also made the cheer team that didn't get a dorm. And we got an apartment off campus. So by the time I was 17 years old, I was living off campus in a 1-bedroom apartment with another girl who was from Sacramento and managing adult life as a 17,
At 17. Holy cow.
and also managing a full-time schedule of college courses, which 90% of them I had zero interest in, and they were at 8 a.m., which was a bad idea. So it was not a positive experience at all.
Yeah. What was the mindset in the choice of taking sociology versus maybe going straight with music or acting or any of those others?
I would have loved to have taken a year off and
Okay.
auditioned, but that was not what I
Not
had
the option. Yeah.
and I think if I had fought hard enough for it, my parents probably would have acquiesced because anything I fought hard enough for, I got. I was also caught up in the graduating and going off to college, and I wanted to do that too. And I was 17, like your friends are doing it when everyone else is doing in that season of life. It's fun, it's exciting. Um, and I should have had a year off. I should have taken a year and just really auditioned and taken dance classes and done that sort of thing. But for those reasons, I didn't. So I went to school and I really had no idea what I was going to major in because in my mind, again, zero scaffolding. In my mind, if I got a music degree or a theater degree, I would have to teach.
Interesting.
And I didn't want to teach.
Right.
So I'm like, if you're going to be an artist or if you're going to be an actress, you just go audition until you get the gig. Like you don't need to get a degree. What is this bullshit?
Right.
Um, so that didn't make sense to me to try to pursue a degree in that field.
Yeah.
That was my 17-year-old rationale. So I was like, well, I have to get a degree in something. And I remember I had a little weekend job at a real estate office. And I remember sitting with like the college catalog and just kind of, because at one point, plot twist, I actually started off as a zoology major.
Whoa. That is a plot twist.
Yeah, told you I was nerdy, but I figured, let's try it. And until I hit my calculus for biological sciences major, and I was like, yeah, not for me. So I'm sitting, in my real estate office on the weekends because I'm the girl that answers the phones, reading through all the majors because even like by middle of my freshman year, I was starting to feel an enormous amount of pressure to take classes that double count, hurry up and select a major because otherwise, like you're
Mhm.
kind of money.
Yeah.
And so I just read through all of the majors to try to go like, what sounds interesting? And psychology sounded interesting, which surprise, surprise, here I am now as a licensed hypnotherapist, and back in school for more education around that. But psychology sounded interesting, but it was an impacted program, and so you had to wait to get into it, right?
Okay.
My mom had a degree in sociology, and sociology had some interesting sounding classes. There were things that I could double count, and it was kind of like, I'll do this.
Okay.
That was the rationale.
Yeah.
And by the end of my first semester, I was in complete burnout. I probably an autistic burnout that I had no idea I was experiencing. And I told my parents, I said, I'm going part-time next semester and I'm only taking dance and music classes. And I did. I think I took one core class. I may have taken like a communications class or something just to like have one additional thing under my belt. But
Yeah.
both my freshman and sophomore year, I went part-time and just took classes in the arts because I was exhausted. I was like barely I was like getting D's in like history and stuff because I was signing up for these classes that were at 8 a.m. and I knew nothing about how my brain worked. I had no freaking support. I was 17 trying to make life decisions.
Yeah.
Like it was a dumpster fire.
Yeah. Again, another point for the audience too is that choosing a, a pathway to go down because of either family went down it or it seems to be the easiest scenario versus stepping into that creative vein of where you can truly flourish if you get into it and realize what the opportunities are. A lot of times we make those decisions just out of circumstance, and it's not always the best opportunity for us. So for the audience, if you're at that point of deciding which direction you want to go for your creative career, look at stepping right into the middle of it in some form or fashion, because that will provide opportunity that you will not perceive otherwise from the outside.
100%. And I would add too, find someone that you can receive support from. If it's not a
Yeah,
father, find a mentor, find a coach, because my husband and I have this conversation a lot and we go, what would our lives have been like had we had parents that really did encourage and support us in the things that we naturally had the desires and proclivities for, you know?
yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. From my perspective, that was a difficult scenario as well. I went off to Pensacola Christian College, which sounded great from
'Cause
the yeah, sounded great from the beginning because they have a publishing company.
oh, okay.
Uh, it's called Abeka Book Publishing.
Oh, Becca. Yes, I'm familiar. Okay.
Yeah. So the thought process was, okay, I'm going to go to school for graphic design and hopefully get a job just straight working in the publishing company. So I'm looking at it as like just an easy route to get into be creative.
Sure.
Got there, everything else was hard. It sucked. I hated it. I was having to work to pave my own way. Being that far away from Michigan as well, the only people I knew were one or two guys that I graduated with, and then there was two upperclassmen that were I was in school with in high school, but they were 2 years older. So they were there as well. So at least I had a small group of people that I knew right off the bat that slightly eased the burden of stepping into college. The rules were way more extreme than what my high school was, being a Christian school. So that in and of itself flipped me on my head. I was like, wait, what is happening here? Like, this is supposed to be college? Like, why is the rules even more strict?
Oh,
And so I lasted 5 semesters, did 4, and failed enough classes to where it was like financially unrealistic to have to take them again. Doing great in my art classes, set out a semester, tried to go back for another one, and that was like, yeah, this isn't for me. Halfway through that semester, I already knew there's no way I'm coming back again. So even burning off that second half of that one semester of realizing I'm not coming back, so I'm not even going to try with the classes.
makes sense to me.
Yeah. So yeah, all of those things play into the opportunity scenarios. Like my parents couldn't afford to help me with college, so I was going to have to do it myself. They also didn't have any information to prep me for what I was about to step into. So even that environment, had no idea of what that was going to be like. They didn't have any creative background other than my mom had a beautician's license and she did hair out of the house. So she had a little bit of creative understanding, but had no understanding of what that looked like in a structured environment of a college campus versus a beauty school. So yeah, having those things in terms of support, whether it's a mentor or just somebody else who understands what you are looking to do, is highly beneficial.
For sure.
Highly.
Yeah. I mean, it was the difference for me between continuing to spin my wheels and really spiral into even more shame because I didn't understand. And I think this is true for people that are gifted and neurodivergent is like we have an intuitive knowing that we have a high degree of capability, but if we don't have the scaffolding or the understanding of how our brain works, we really can struggle to perform consistently and to produce at a level that seems, especially in like Western culture, it's all about the product, right? And so
Yeah.
we don't produce at that same speed or timeline, but we know ourselves to be very intelligent, capable beings. And so there's an incongruence in our inner dialogue, I think, and our
Yeah.
understanding that can really cause a lot of shame because we're like, I don't understand why I can't do the thing
Yes.
or why I'm not able to show up the way that my peers are able to show up or why I'm burning out or why I'm exhausted all the time, what have you.
Hmm.
And that is not a great place to be because then you start to go, well, it's obviously an issue with me. Like there's a fundamental flaw here and I can't figure it out. To your point, having a level of mentorship and coaching, even if you're paying for it, like to the audience, hire rich. Let like
Yeah.
you are so important to the artist journey because we need someone to be objective about how great we are. A,
Yeah.
because we aren't good about doing that. No one is. I mean, artists,
Right.
that's just not a human thing that we're very good at. Uh,
Yeah.
and B, we need someone to really be able to scaffold. Because I have a theory. I think I may have said this on the For Love of Creatives podcast. I have a theory that most creatives are probably a little neurodivergent to some degree.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that makes producing product tricky. And
Yeah.
having someone that can really scaffold and come alongside you and hold your hand through that is absolutely priceless. And it was for me, it changed everything for me. The minute I broke for a high ticket coach, I was like, this is more expensive than anything I've ever done in my life. What am I doing? And
Yeah.
it changed everything.
Yeah. Thank you for that compliment. I have not received one of those, to
Well,
be honest with you.
you're
I
welcome.
appreciate that. I've had people, give testimonials for me, all that kind of stuff, but it didn't come across the way that you just put it. And I appreciate that
Yeah.
immensely. Was there any part of you, even from early on, that had a higher sensitivity to everything that was around you, whether it was intuitive or empathic from an energetic standpoint?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I didn't It's interesting because growing up in a religious environment, when you're a child, I mean, you truly have half a brain. Your brain development, you're operating with such a limited understanding of life and then an actual limited brain structure. So
Hmm.
for worldview, you're told is the worldview is what you believe.
Yeah.
And so growing up in a deeply religious community, it's hard because you're not even given language for your experiences. And
Hmm.
my experience, there's a lot of like sideways comments about things that looked more spiritual or metaphysical or woo,
Right.
whatever. There was a lot of like that hooey, So I yes, to your question, 100%. I also had a lot of sensitivities to just certain sensory stimuli as well that I eventually grew out of. I have mild things now,
Okay.
that I didn't have as a child that I've developed as an adult, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of like energetic sensitivity, 1000%, but had no idea because there's
Yeah.
no language for it whatsoever.
Same.
Yeah.
Exactly the same. That's why I was curious.
Yeah.
Um,
And so it's a weird kind of like coming home to yourself because you're like, wow, all of a sudden I learned this when my oldest son was a baby and he went through a period when he was 8 weeks old where he was like crying all the time for no reason. And we were like, well, he's not teething, like he's not sick, couldn't figure it out. came across this book called Wonder Weeks. It's a Swedish couple that researched babies' brain development over the first 40 weeks of life. And
Mm,
they identified, I don't know, maybe 50 or so, maybe it was less than that. I don't remember the exact number, but multiple tens of brain leaps that babies make in the first 40 weeks of life. And
yeah.
this was right around the 8-week period of time, which I think was what was happening with my son, was that all of a sudden their brain is able to experience 3D.
Ah,
Prior to 8 weeks, they're seeing things primarily two-dimensionally, and then all of a sudden they wake up one day and there's a third dimension.
interesting. Yes.
And so that throws babies off. And that's why, like, they can be fussy for no seeming reason because their brain is making these big leaps that you can't see. And so that's what I feel like coming into an awareness of our like energetic sensitivity that's always been there.
Yeah,
Like, whoa, what just happened? You know,
exactly. Yep,
like reintegrate it with new language. And it's some wild experience.
for sure. That makes me think of an episode I had last year with a lady in Australia. Her name's Joanna Lloyd, and she has a organization called Echoes of Birth. And so she's trained in prenatal and postnatal therapy and maternity and birthing as well.
Cool.
But some of the information that she brought forth in that conversation on the podcast was so staggering as to the things that happen to us in the womb play out over the course of our entire lives.
Oh, 100%.
And it was so wild how accurate the numbers were, even that she was quoting. And it's been studied. I hadn't really heard about it much prior to talking with her, how much study was done with it. My only perception of that concept was just the generational trauma aspect of what I had learned in years of therapy.
Or, yeah.
But yeah, super fascinating. It might be something that interests you as well, that episode.
Yeah. And I have my own experiences of particularly because I'm studying subconscious
Yeah.
work right now. And so the method that I'm studying right now does a lot of, I hesitate to use the word regression because it's not necessarily regression therapy, but it
Yeah.
does utilize an experience of going back to certain memories so we can understand where certain beliefs are formed.
Yes.
I've done a few sessions on myself and one in particular where I was trying to understand because there's a part of my neurodivergent experience that I think, and now knowing what I know, because we are just at the tail end of having both of our boys go through it, the traditional evaluation process, so we understand what we're working with. And I've learned a ton, but I don't believe that knowing what I know now from our psychologist, that I would meet the diagnostic criteria to have a diagnosis of what is known as PDA.
Right.
But anytime I listen to a podcast about it or anything like that, I'm like, that reads me like a book in certain aspects of my life. It doesn't pervade my entire life. And so because of that, I don't meet the diagnostic criteria, but I very much understand there's a nervous system sense of threat when I have a loss of autonomy. That
Yeah.
really makes me go into kind of survival mode. And I was like, that'd be really interesting to see if I can figure out where that came from, right? So I did kind of a session on myself and we go back to 3 scenes. And the first scene that I went to was actually in utero.
Mm,
It was because in the 80s they didn't check for gender because they really didn't use ultrasounds yet that we do now. And so my mom knew that I was going to be a girl, but the only reason she did is because they gave her an amniocentesis because she was 40 and they wanted to make sure they wanted to rule out Down syndrome. I don't know if you're familiar with amniocentesis, but it's when they inject a needle into the stomach of the mother and into the uterine lining to extract the fluid to assess
yeah.
DNA to see if that we have all of our chromosomes.
Right.
Um, and the memory that I recovered was actually that, and me
Oh, wow.
moving away
Yeah.
from the needle and feeling immediately like my life was threatened. And not because I thought there was a needle coming at me, but because what I knew to understand about the whole context of the situation was that if I had Down syndrome, I wasn't wanted.
Oh, wow.
And like, I mean, I still get chills saying it because
I I got him.
yeah, like that realization was like, I might need a drink after this. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
what in the hell? But it also deeply resonated with me too. I'm like, oh, well, no wonder now I have kind of a sensitized nervous system to certain stimuli and law and perceived threats to my autonomy
Yeah.
because I already feel unwanted if I don't go up in a certain way. So damn it, better be a girl. Cause I remember my mom saying too, I was really hoping you were going to be a girl because I didn't want you to be a boy and turn out like your dad. So
Oh, man.
girl, better not have Down syndrome, better perform.
Dang. Triple whammy.
Wild, right?
Yes. And it makes so much sense too, because it, at that point in time, that womb is your safe space. And you were literally being invaded by something that you didn't even understand or know about
Yeah.
into your safe space.
And yet there's some higher order of intelligence where I did receive messages that I
Yeah,
consciously articulate until I was 42.
exactly.
Didn't even know that.
That that's the beauty of, in my opinion, where psychology, therapy, hypnotherapy, other modalities outside of traditional quote unquote medicine have the opportunity to help a person heal in
Yeah.
ways that would never be looked at otherwise.
Yeah. And I would even take it further and say often they're far more valuable than traditional medicine
Absolutely.
and far less destructive.
Yes, for sure. As you're getting to the end of your college journey and you're starting to decide, all right, where am I going to step into the work environment potentially? What's that mindset look like at that point in time?
Well, my college journey ended a lot like yours did. I was
Oh,
at college for 2 years, and by the end of it, I was so exhausted. And I just felt adrift. I felt like yet again, I was not able to truly access the things I wanted to be able to access and go after the things that I felt were meant for me. Uh,
yeah.
and I had, like I said earlier, I spent the second half of both freshman and sophomore year focusing more on arts related courses. And I was like, F it. I can't do this anymore. I've got to focus on a career path that puts me more squarely in the arts space. But again, now I'm 19, which is not a far cry from 17, still not really operating a full brain and don't have a lot of people in my life that are really helping me think through my decision making process. And so I was
Mm,
I'm going to transfer to USC and I'm going to go to their recording arts program because then I at least have a skill where I can get a job and I don't have to teach because I'm
right.
and so I unfortunately the California state system's way of, doing classes doesn't transfer perfectly to a private system. So I had to retake like a math class and an English class so that it could transfer into their private school environment. And so I ended up taking a year at a junior college that was closer to where my mom was living and kind of where I went to high school. And
Okay.
it's only music classes except for like the two classes I had to retake. I was in a vocal jazz ensemble. I was in musical theater. I was in like a music production class. I was just music theory. I was eating it up. I was like, this is it. It was like
Right.
the best. Um,
Yeah.
but I also, and that I said this too earlier, I was at a place where I really also became keenly aware that even at like 19, 20 years of age, I was really behind the curve compared to even, and these were kids at junior college. These weren't kids at like AMDA, you know, or
Mhm.
USC's theater program. I mean, even kids at junior college, I already felt like I was really behind the curve in terms of how much, you know, experience I really did have.
Okay.
And that was very challenging for me, just my own self-confidence level in continuing to pursue it. And I was still dealing with having to manage adult life and college academics, even though I was having a lot more fun and it felt much more aligned. I was still struggling to the point where my mom finally took me to a therapist and they put me on Paxil because they thought I was depressed. I think I was just having another burnout.
Oh my God.
You too?
Yes.
Yeah. And I was like, no, I was 19 and I was autistic. That was it. That was it. I wasn't depressed. I mean, maybe there was some of that because
Mm.
I was struggling so much, but like I was sleeping because I was in burnout. And so yeah, that was like how my junior year ended. And things really deteriorated for me just in my personal life at that point because like we were talking about before, like I was just experiencing so much self-loathing and shame and I really was aimless and I was trying to go in this direction, but it just felt like it was always out of reach. And there was always something
Okay.
I couldn't quite get the support I needed. And I was very much all alone in trying to create the life that I wanted for myself. By the end of my third year, I was like, I don't think I have the energy for this anymore. And I don't really remember. I mean, I had turned 21, which is not a good age to turn when you're dealing with a lot of self-loathing, stress, and confusion. Um,
Yeah.
my relationship with my mom was as strained as it's ever been. My relationship with my family, because of that, was also strained. My my relationships with friends were I just wasn't with friends that were good influences, we'll say that.
Okay. Got it.
And I kinda got to a point where I was like, "If I don't get the fuck out of here, I don't know what's gonna happen." I don't know that I ever actually thought I would die, but I
Hmm.
knew that I would my soul would.
Yeah.
And I was like, "I need to go somewhere else that has an entertainment industry." And it was like and it can't be LA because 'cause I'm too close to home, and LA is just gross.
Yeah.
Ugh, I mean, it didn't take me long going back to the sensitivity thing, right? I mean
Yeah. Yes.
for auditions, and I just felt like I needed to take a shower afterwards, and I didn't know why.
Yeah.
It's a hard, hard city. It's a really hard city, and I lived in Hollywood actually for a little while before I moved to Nashville, but,
Mm.
okay, well, I'm gonna get out of here because I need a break. So, I'm
Yeah.
try something else for a year, and it's either gonna be New York or, like, Austin or Nashville, I guess?
Hmm.
Work felt like more the same, pace of life that I didn't love, expensive and cold and further away from family. So that I ruled that out pretty quick.
All right.
Then it was between Austin and Nashville. And I had this is like again, 21-year-old rationale. I'm like, there's a coyote ugly in Nashville. So if I can't get a job, I can at least go.
Oh, that's classic. That's a classic one right there.
Nashville was the choice. And you know what? It worked out beautifully. I mean, I within weeks, because I had worked in production, I had, you know, participated in some films and I had worked in production as a PA. And so I had some experience with that. And so when I moved to Nashville, I was able to get some PA work almost immediately with CMT. Um,
Okay.
and things really moved from there because Nashville, especially in 2005, it was like very small town feel in a lot of ways. So it didn't take
Yeah.
long for you to make friends and meet people that knew people. And it was very easy city to integrate into at the age that I was. Uh,
Yeah.
and I met my husband 6 months after that. And like, then I stayed, you know, of course.
Okay.
But yeah, that was the end of my college experience. And I told my parents, I was like, listen, I'm going to try it for a year. If it sucks, I'll come home.
Right.
But I met my husband and I stayed.
H- How did you guys meet?
So we actually met through a mutual friend. How did I meet Donnie, our friend? I- Again, probably through another mutual friend, but he was an independent producer and he
Okay.
like most people do or did in 2005 era Nashville in a house. And he was really close to downtown, but he, was pretty well known in the independent music scene in Nashville as one of the guys to go to. And I met him, and he was known for hiring interns. And so I got an internship. And so I became really good friends with his girlfriend at the time, who ended up being a bridesmaid in our wedding.
Nice.
But he knew my husband because my husband had also utilized him, I think, to do some production for a band that he was in, and they became friends. And so there was one day where Donnie called both of us up because he was doing a record for a Christian artist and needed like a choral sound for some BGVs.
Mm.
Called up a bunch of friends, and we ended up meeting that day because we were singing in the studio.
Oh, cool.
Very Nashville
Yes,
sounding story.
definitely.
But it was cool because like we had known all of the friends in that group
Hmm.
individually, but had never met yet. So it was
Wow.
like a matter of time.
Got it. Got it. So your husband's a musician then?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
The drummer, guitarist, multi-instrumentalist, songwriter, but primarily music producer. He moved to Nashville, actually to work with Dan Huff, if you're familiar with Dan.
Yes.
So that was his goal. He wanted to be a music producer. And of course, it doesn't exist the same way as it did 20 years ago. So his path has been interesting too.
Exactly. Exactly. As you're now in this environment where it feels a bit more comfortable because of the creativity, the things that are happening, things that are taking place. Now you've met your husband as well, and you're starting this relationship with another creative. How is that for your soul and your spirit at that point? Is it still in that conflicted mode?
Double-edged sword, I would
Okay.
say. Yeah, because I I mean, those early years in Nashville were such rich years because I found my people, man. I was like, these are really cool people. And they were people that loved the same things that I loved and loved creative stuff and musicians and artists. And it just pervaded so
Mhm.
much of life. And of course, you're 21, 22, so life is a lot simpler. And of course, like at the time, I was still pretty religious. And that was the culture of how people interacted around faith in the South was very different than Southern California and what I had experienced growing up.
Yeah.
It was a lot more laid back. I don't know if I'm going to offend anyone by saying this, but I almost parallel it to how people are that grow up Catholic, because it's like this is just what we do culturally. Like I'm
Yeah.
still Marlboro Reds after we get out of church service. You know that,
Yes.
like um,
Right.
it's not even a question. And I found that really refreshing because I came from such a sterile, tightly wound, we have to look very different than the world, and I wonder often, is that because we geographically we're so close to LA and like just a really different cultural reality where we really needed to look different or whatever. Uh,
Yeah.
Whereas like in the South, everyone was like, yeah, like we go to church and we like have beers at the after church barbecue. Like that's what you do.
Yeah.
Like, and that was my experience growing up of people that grew up Catholic was like, we were pounding Guinness, going to church tomorrow morning, and then we're going to go confess to the priest. Like that's what? That's wrong?
Yeah. Exactly.
That was really refreshing because culturally it felt like that was a breath of fresh air.
Mm.
And then on the other side, or like I guess double-edged sword, the other end of that was it was very confronting for me because I still had this narrative of like I'm so much less experienced than some of these people who really did a lot of like music and theater in high school and college because again, going back to this extra sensory hyper awareness of like how I'm perceived. And, I didn't really engage in theater and music in high school. Um,
Yeah.
because it was what the dorks did. And I went,
Gotcha. Okay.
you know what I mean? Like, even though I was nerdy, like
Yeah.
my people didn't do that. And again, it goes back to kind of a scaffolding thing. Like I didn't really have a lot of support that was like, hey, you should try an instrument. My mom wanted me to do piano, but I was forced to do it as a small child and I didn't love it. I wanted to dance and I wasn't getting access to that. So I just stonewalled everything.
Yeah.
And so I just always felt like being around all these brilliant, because Nashville, God bless America, it attracts the most brilliant musicians. And even the average ones are brilliant, It's
Yes.
and then here I am, and I'm like, I've done some commercials, like it was just not, it was a cultural mismatch in a lot of ways. Because also I think like something about Southern culture, there's a lot of music rich history too. And that's
Very
not
much.
California.
No.
So like even if you're not a musician in Nashville, like everyone can play the guitar.
Yeah.
So getting back to my point, like it was confronting because I still felt I did not meet the standard in my own mind. And I remember the first time my husband's an insanely brilliant musician, so talented. And I remember the first time he was like plucking around the guitar and he's like, sing this harmony. I started crying because I was so embarrassed that like I was gonna screw it up. And
Oh, wow.
there was a lot of,
Internal struggle.
yeah, yes, well said.
Very much. Holy cow. The Did you almost feel that it was imposter syndrome as well?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that that label would be appropriate. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
certain situations.
Yeah. Oh man, my heart breaks over that because I even know this from my career is at certain points we have that imposter syndrome of feeling like we're incapable because of who we're around. But the reality is only a perceptive
Right,
scenario.
right.
Um, the abilities and talents that the individual may have who's experiencing the imposter syndrome is probably something that that other person that you think is far beyond you in skill and accomplishments, it's exactly what they're lacking and the thing that they need to complement what they're trying to do.
Yeah,
And so many times I've seen it across the years where it's the people that are so phenomenal have the biggest imposter syndrome and they don't feel like they're where they need to be or even have a belief of where they could be. And I get around them and I'm like, what are you not seeing? Because this is amazing. Like how can I say this to you differently so you hear it in the way you need to hear it to make that switch in your brain because you're phenomenal and they don't always get that. And
right.
again, for the audience, like don't do that to yourself. Put that aside, put that away immediately, and just continue to work in what you love and believe in, and just keep doing it because eventually you're going to find where you fit in,
Yeah,
and it's going to make all the sense at that point.
yeah, yeah.
How long after you meet your now husband did it take for you guys to realize, hey, this is something? This is a thing we want to hold on to for the
We
rest of our lives.
got married so fast. I mean, I think we dated 8 months, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, we were married 8 months after that. So from point of meeting you to being your wife, 10 months.
Holy cow. That's that's one of those knowingness, I'm assuming.
There's a knowingness. We also laugh that it could have just been like a trauma bond.
Oh, that's classic right
But
there. That's classic.
we will celebrate 20 years next month.
Oh, congratulations.
I don't recommend it, but
Okay.
in our case, it was okay.
Yeah.
Um, I think naturally, had we spent more time not rushing into marriage, like we could have avoided a lot of pain
Okay.
because I think, especially again, we were very young. I mean, I was 22 and he was 24.
Mm,
And so, like, when you get married, and I can't say this because I've never been married past the age of 30, but I assume that for most people, but particularly when you're younger, when you get married, there is a bit of a switch that flips on in the brain. And for Dustin and I, we both wanted to pursue creative careers, and
mm,
I was floundering because I didn't really know what that looked like for me anymore. I knew I wanted to be a performer, but I didn't know. Now it felt like, okay, well, now I'm in the bubble of Nashville. So does this mean I need to be a singer-songwriter? Do I need to and I did, I started songwriting and I started going in that direction. And, it was always just kind of like I was trying to figure out how I wanted to show up as an artist inside the environment I found myself in, which wasn't always aligned. For Dustin and I, we were both very much trying to pursue creative careers that doesn't always jive with the responsibilities of married life.
got you. Okay.
Like when
Yeah.
we got married, it was like, now we need to make money. And now we need to do the responsible stuff. So there was a little bit of a different switch that happened in the brain that does, and you see this particularly with women when they become mothers, especially women that are artists when they become mothers. I'm walking through this with a friend of mine right now who mom at 40, and she's what I just let go of because I'm kind of grieving the fact that I don't really want the artist thing anymore, but
Yeah.
never would have expected that being a mom would replace my identity as an artist. And so there's
Right.
this switch that flips where your priorities change and you don't really want them to because you still really want to pursue what you feel like you're called to do with your life. And at the same time, you want this other thing too. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of tension in that.
For sure. And I heard you mention this on Dwight and Maddox's podcast, For the Love of Creatives, that there's a different standard for females in the creative industry.
Oh, yeah.
And that hit me because I've always known this. I've always seen the other side of it, being a male in those industries and seeing how differently females are treated
Yeah.
and being completely fucking confused because I've always perceived females as having something more than most males do. Number one is the intuition component. Number two is they are literally made to create. The female is made to create.
Yeah.
They are the vessel of creation. Realistically,
Yeah.
that's how life comes into being.
Yeah.
And so I've always had this perspective of being so confused because I didn't understand why that they were getting treated differently. I didn't understand why they were getting paid differently. I didn't understand why they were not getting opportunities that absolutely deserved and had the talents for. But yet, because they were a female, it was like, no, we're going to go with this guy over here.
Yeah.
And I would be dumbfounded. And for the creative female audience that may be listening to this, I want to encourage you to do not give up on the things that you love and that are heart centered for your creativity. Yes, responsibility comes into play when you start family, you start having kids, all of that kind of stuff. And hopefully you can pass this on to your friend even. You don't have to choose one over the other. You can still have the two. It's just a new way of thinking that has to be put in place to see how they can mesh together and work cohabitively.
Yeah, and one thing that I think is really important as well for women once they do become mothers and they go through that shift of priorities and often grief of loss over who they always knew themselves to be,
Yeah.
or the potential of having access to a level of career success or something that they might not be able to get in the short term because they have maybe really small kids at home that need a lot of presence.
Yeah.
I always say the reality is that being a mother adds a level of depth and richness to the artistry that you cannot comprehend before you become a mom. And so to your point, you don't have to give up on it entirely. It's a shift in perspective. And yes, there may be seasons where you can't prioritize it as greatly because you've chosen to prioritize the child, but in the work of parenting that child, and I actually said this, I was on a panel in Dallas. It was a panel called Women in the Arts. And I joked with everybody because like I was up there with 3 other women who were like actively creating art and like doing all this cool stuff. And I'm like, I haven't done shit in 4 years.
Right.
And I was like, my artistry is raising humans right now. That's
Yeah.
art. And the way that that informs my life will produce more art when the season is right again.
Yeah.
Produce art that I couldn't have produced otherwise. So I think that's a really cool reframe, particularly for women.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. After you guys are married, you step into this partnership with other creatives and you created this storyteller media entity. What was the realization point of number one, this is a necessary thing? And number two, here's an opportunity for us to engage and give some guidance and direction and to helping other artists do what they want to do.
That's a really great question. And technically, Storyteller was not the impetus for that. We had another business that was under another name
Okay.
called Gun Entertainment and
What was it again?
Top Gun Entertainment.
It's a cool name.
Yeah, we annoyingly, I was hosting an event in New York City, and back when Instagram was like still new, and so I was hashtagging Pop Gun Entertainment, and there was a company in Brooklyn called Pop Gun Presents that just so happened to own a patent on the name.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, so we had to let go of the name, which was annoying because like they weren't doing the same type of business. They were doing events. Like there was still music events. That's not what we were doing. We were doing production and media
Right.
and casting, but they decided to try to make it legal and we were like, whatever. So we had to
Yeah.
leave.
The cease and desist.
Yeah. But that, that was that decision point was again, it's so interesting, like having to relive these. Like I'm actually having a lot of fun because like making me think, oh yeah, wow, so interesting. What were the decisions that we were making at the time? And we got married in 2006. By 2008, that was when like things really started to drastically shift for artists in terms of how social media was informing their ability to connect directly with fans and potential clients and what have you. And artists had no idea what to do with it, just none. And it also was shifting a lot for how music was being produced as well, because everything tech was like shifting so fastly.
Yeah.
Fastly, that's not a word. And as I mentioned, my husband came to Nashville to be a music producer. He thought he was going to get to be the guy sitting behind the gears, telling the engineers what to turn up and what to turn down. And things moved so rapidly that I remember saying to him, I'm like, Dustin, you need to go back and you need to get an engineering degree. You're not going to be able to start a production business with independent artists and have them hire you just as the producer. A, they don't have the budget for it. And B, they don't understand it.
Right.
They don't understand what a producer does and how that differs from an engineer, you know?
Yes.
And so if you can collapse, to use a term you used earlier, if you can collapse those two things into one service, like you're going to be more competitive. And so I encouraged him to go back to school. He went to SAE in Nashville to get the engineering education. And I was working this is my first corporate job in the music business. I was working for a company called Salem Media. And I was, without telling you the whole long story, I was really put in a very awkward position because they were trying to get me to sell advertising into a magazine that was a legacy magazine that they'd had for 20 years, but had since gone digital because no one was buying magazines.
Right.
And they were trying to figure out how to make up for the lost ad revenue that they would traditionally get from labels. And so they're like, sell it to independent artists. And I'm like,
Oh, God.
I see your open rates, and you're putting me in a horribly ethical dilemma because I cannot, in good conscience, tell these artists to spend their last $600 on buying a digital ad in a magazine that's buried 60 pages deep. It was horrible. And so I ended up um, creating another resource. I created an educational resource that was meant to engage an audience of independent artists and then sell advertising to vendors that wanted to get in front of the independent artist audience. So that's how I pivoted that. But because
Okay.
I met a lot of independent artists. And so
Yeah.
Dustin and I were both kind of on these individual paths, but we were working with a lot of independent artists and they kept asking us to manage. And I was like, I will not. I will not manage anyone ever. Um,
Yeah.
but he and I both really loved because it was just kind of like a byproduct of the circumstances we found ourselves in, producing artists and consulting with advertising and marketing, that we loved being able to give advice and guide and mentor and coach.
Yeah.
So that was really where we were like, this, there, we have something here. And we, that was where we were like, okay, we really have an opportunity to help artists better understand how to effectively utilize social media, how to build new revenue streams. And then also, they're going to need production. So, you know, now we have that resource as well. So that
Yeah.
was the set of circumstances that we were operating in at the time.
Yeah. That's amazing that you recognized what was happening with that company you were working with, realized that your internal integrity was not going to align,
Yeah.
and created your own pivot within your own way you wanted to operate and work. That's huge. I want to highlight that because having the mindset to think about doing a pivot is, for most, very scary.
Yeah.
But I encourage it all the time because it could be the thing that opens all the doors
Yeah.
if you're willing to make a pivot. It's not always a smooth scenario for a lot of people or in a lot of situations.
I don't know that
But
it,
yeah, but the pivot a lot of times is the thing that really opens the doors to everything that you did not even expect could be the opportunity. And you're absolutely correct. The music industry at that point in time was stuck in the television, radio conglomerate structure, and digital media starts to explode. And they're trying to figure out, wait a second, we've been doing this forever. Like, how are we going to make this change? And of course, those are the opportunities for people to get taken advantage of, opportunities for people to take advantage, and it creates a scenario of just an unhealthy environment for many, many people. Also, for the independent artists, the ones that are grinding it every day, and the ones who are trying to be the musician and the stars that are going up and down Broadway, playing every place that says yes and will put you on the schedule, it becomes the breaking point for many
yeah,
because
vulnerable
it's
groups.
yes, exactly. Now, opportunities wide open, folks. You can reach the other side of the world in a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
And that's, again, that's something that I try to convey to many people because I had the exact same scenario. I was working with so many different people in the music component of Metro Detroit that people were starting to ask me to be a manager. And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
no, I want no part of that. No part of that. Like I can't even get you guys to coordinate an outfit. And if I can't get you to coordinate an outfit, there's no way I'm going to try and manage you. I'll work with you. I'll help you do this and I'll help you do that. I can give you advice. I can put you in contact with some different people, but I don't want to do any of that management stuff. I did one attempt at trying to do that. Was working with the band. They were on this upward trajectory, and I had started working with Kid Rock at this point in time before he got signed to Atlantic. And it was kind of like they were coming up behind him in that trajectory. And so they were putting on these shows, selling out the venues, and through friends of friends, they knew Eminem, Marshall Mathers.
Yeah.
And so the word got passed along to do a showcase. He got invited. He was able to come out, and literally it ended up being a scenario where he sits down to talk with him after the show in the dressing room. And they're like, hey, can you make sure nobody gets in here while we have this conversation? I'm like, all right, yeah, whatever. And then I turn into a security guard from management scenario. And it's like, all right, what's going on here? We're getting confused. We're blurring lines.
Yeah.
And so eventually it ended up he presented them with a deal, an opportunity, not what they were thinking, what they were looking for. And it didn't pan out all the way. And it was a scenario too where they were trying to do something that wasn't it was relative in conversation, but it wasn't relative to culture at that point in time. Whereas if they were doing it right now, it would be hotcakes. But I couldn't get that across to them that you're going to have to adjust a little bit, especially with the deal that he just offered. Like, you're going to have to adjust to figure that out. Where I'm going with this is the opportunities for independent artists to make those leaps and bounds is unending right now. You don't have to go through all of those processes. You don't have to follow the natural trajectory. You can get on TikTok and blow up overnight. You just have to keep doing those things. You have to keep putting yourself out there. You have to keep believing in yourself and doing what's in your heart rather than what you think you need to be doing. And that's that type of scenario where it's very much beneficial to have people like you and your husband who understand the industry rather, understand the avenues that are available for up and coming artists, and to be able to put that in front of them and say, hey, this is the way you can do this, and bypass a whole lot of aggravation.
Yeah.
With that scenario of getting to that 10-year point in Nashville and realizing, I think we might need to move on to somewhere else. What is that decision point and what is the thought process in making that decision?
Well, we were in Nashville for a lot longer than that. Actually, my husband was there 18 years and I was there 16 before we moved to Florida.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was a lot of just practical circumstances. I mean, part of it was COVID related.
Okay.
We just thought, because we already were homeschooling. And so, the tutorial that our kids were at, they couldn't guarantee that our kids were not going to be required to wear masks when they go back in the fall. And I did 1 year acquiescing to the mask thing because my kids only went 2 days a week.
Yeah.
I was done. I was like, no, nope. If you can't guarantee me that there will be no masks, we will not be coming back. It was early 2021. I mean, things were still very weird. And
Yes.
how long we were going to be locked down. And because we homeschooled and because we both worked for ourselves, we were like, we can go wherever we want. If we're going to be locked down, let's go be near a beach.
Right.
Try it for a year and we can always come back to Nashville. So that was part of it. And we also, Nashville had, it's not what it used to be. In the tell you what, in the 5 years, it's really interesting because like I got so much slack for leaving California to move to Nashville. People accuse me of wanting to go cow tipping. You
Oh,
know, y'all don't know what you're talking about. But, Southern California kids' attitude of what they think Nashville is all about. And
yeah.
and then the 5 years leading up to 2020, all of California had moved to Nashville because they all fancied having a hobby farm and they could sell their 800 square foot postage stamp for $2 million and go buy a McMansion with a freaking 2 acres. So again, product of circumstance. I mean, we looked for a year. We were renting in our favorite neighborhood in Nashville because my husband was using the house that we owned as his studio. And
Okay.
we were like, we saw an opportunity to get like a brother-in-law deal to live in an awesome neighborhood that's literally 2 miles from downtown and not pay those prices because we knew the owners.
Yeah.
Well, we did that and then let the other house be the studio. Sold that the week before everything locked down. Didn't know that was going to happen.
Perfect timing.
And then we were just stuck in our rental, and the rental was not a long-term solution because we both worked from home. Like, and so we didn't have the room in the rental to do studio work and for me to have an office and 2 kids homeschooling, it was too much. And so, but we looked for a year. We looked at purchases, we looked at rentals, and I mean, the real estate economy in Nashville during that period of time was absolutely insane. I mean, you were competing with people who were buying from California sight unseen, waiving inspection, and paying $100,000 over asking.
Oh, geez.
I mean, it was insane.
Yeah.
So we just got to the point where we were like exhausted by the search and thought, I think Nashville's just closing the door. And not for nothing. I mean, those were some of the practical circumstances, but to take it to a deeper level, one of the things that was really profound for both of us was the inner exhaustion that I think we both started to experience of being in an entertainment city because all of our friends who we loved dearly, except for one at the time, were on in some level involved in the industry. And there's just always, whether you mean to or not, there's always this subtext of competition and
Yeah.
always this energy of what are you doing this week? And do I need to feel bad about the fact that I'm not doing what you're is
Yeah.
always another open tab. And so when we moved to Florida, it's been a 50-50 because the first year we were like, wow, we're just like hanging out with people that are like teachers and like accountants and like it's so
Right.
great. It's so they don't give a shit about what we do. It doesn't matter. It was very refreshing. And then after a while we were like, where are our creative people at? So it's a bit of both, but that was another piece of it for us was just like, man, I can we just be normal? Like, does it always have to be about like who's doing what? And that and the other part of that too was especially when you start to have kids and you start to have a family and you want to go do things with your kids and you want to do things with your families and your friends are all broke creatives.
Yeah.
There's a miss
Yeah.
in where you find community. And it's not that we were necessarily like wildly wealthy, but we just prioritized funds differently and we were not still in that dog eat dog race to the degree that some of our other friends were.
Yeah.
And so it became challenging. A lot of our friends, we had a really wonderful group of friends that were all kind of having kids at the same time and about 50% of those friendships moved out of state after a while. They all left, and so we had a few that we were still hanging on to. And I made some amazing, amazing friends that I have still to today through the work that I was doing with female artists the last few years there in Nashville. But by and large, I think we just tired of the pace and
Right.
patient. And for us sensitive little souls, like it can be a lot.
Definitely. Definitely. I realized that too with working with the people that I was working with. It was my soul was becoming more sensitive. So that environment was very much starting to be taxing. And I couldn't be in it anymore. I had to make the decision to step out of it.
And there's a lot of, especially for those of us that work for ourselves and, gig work is something where you're always looking for the next opportunity.
Yep.
The emotional roller coaster of someone potentially having something and then not, and then potentially having something and then not.
Yep.
Or also, I know this to be true of my husband. He actually did manage one of his clients. He was like, all right, I'll do it. I'll try it. And he had a client who was using him for video actually for a long, long time. And then finally he acquiesced and he said, I'll manage you. Because he was a kick-ass, he was really working hard on his own. And Dustin was like, I can come alongside this and pour gas on this fire. But the other side of that coin is being sensitive folk that feel deeply like we can fall in love with our clients and come to
Yeah.
have deep connections and friendships. And then if something doesn't work out on the business side, that's a hard path to walk as well. And so I think, being in this line of work is not for the faint of heart. It's just
Very
not.
much.
We're sensitive already as it is.
Exactly.
And then we're putting ourselves out there. I mean, it really is like a very whiplashy type experience. And I think after a while, you just kind of go, yeah, I think I need a break. And I think we expected to come back. We definitely, I mean, we've been in Florida now 4 years and we still kind of look at each other and we're like, how are we still here? But there's, I mean, I don't think you're ever going to find a perfect geographical location. It's kind of like when you're buying a house, you're always going to have to give some. And so we do feel like we have a good balance, whereas like we can drive to Nashville. It's a 10-hour drive. You can do it in a day. Uh,
Yep.
I was there a few weeks ago visiting friends and, it's a quick, easy flight, but it is nice to be not in an entertainment city. There's something
Right.
about that.
Definitely. Definitely. With the work that you're getting credentialed in right now, the clinical hypnotherapy and the rapid resolution therapy specifically, what was the moment that you realized this is something that I want to pursue to help others because maybe it was something that helped you?
Yeah. And I want to make a distinction. I actually got certified in rapid resolution therapy in 2022.
Okay.
And I am now back in school for similar but slightly different modality called rapid transformational therapy.
Okay.
Both rooted in hypnotherapy, both different modalities rooted in hypnotherapy. So, but to your point, when I did decide to get certified the first time, it was because we thought that my husband was dealing with some, knowing what we know now, we're like, you may have still been dealing with PTSD, but maybe not for the reasons that we thought initially. I think it
Right.
had more to do with 39 years of undiagnosed ADHD and trying to navigate as an entrepreneur with zero scaffolding and not
Right.
executive functioning that's challenged and all these things.
Yeah.
And it was, again, back to our point about the importance of finding mentors and coaches and how much it radically changed my life. I met a woman through my very first coach that I ever hired who had also walked through a journey with having a husband that was dealing with PTSD. Now, hers was because of military service. Mine, Dustin's
Okay.
military. But she was the one that introduced me to rapid resolution therapy because having had a unsavory childhood, and
Mhm.
we were in family therapy when I was 8, around the time my parents were like kind of ending their marriage. And then I was back in therapy in high school because my mom was and I were at odds. And so that was her solution. And I was back in therapy in college because my mom thought I was depressed, and then by the time I was 21 and I was like making my own money, I thought, I'm going to pay for my own therapy. I'm going to do it my way because I know I've got some stuff going on. And so I've been in and out of therapy my entire life. And again, the energetic sensitivity, like, is it energetic sensitivity or a very, very refined sense of pattern recognition? I don't know. Maybe it's both.
Both.
But I definitely can tell when there are people operating at lower vibrational levels, trauma patterns, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so I, much to my husband's chagrin, pointed that out very early on in our relationship. And uh, by the time, let's see, we'd been married, I guess, about 15 years at the time. And we had seen like some marriage therapy here and there, but some of the patterns with him like just never really changed. And now I'm like, well, it's because it's ADHD. It's not like something that
Yeah.
you therapy for to heal. It's something that you learn to work with
Yes.
and develop skills around. But we were like, well, maybe, he actually ended up going to outpatient rehab for trauma because we were just like trying all the things, right?
Yeah.
It just gets to a point, as with everything, you're like, I'm exhausted. I feel like I've tried everything. And so, I met this woman through my coach whose husband had, within 3 days of work, completely eradicated his PTSD. And I was like, okay, tell me more, and that was the first time that I started to see a framework and an actual therapeutic modality that was evidence-based and backed by testimonials and science that I was able to um, recognize my own internal, like, intuitive leanings inside of. And so it resonated with me. I was like, oh, what he's saying and how he's approaching this makes sense because I'm already seeing this in my own life, in my own work, and things of that nature. So that is where we found rapid resolution therapy and why I decided to get certified. I mean, I really decided to get certified because I wanted to apply that work in a more strategic way in the work I was doing with my clients because I was, again, doing it intuitively already. Did we lose you? Hey.
Hey, Lindsay, my internet just went out and it started storming.
Oh, so it's like out.
Yes.
No worries.
I'm trying to see if I can restart that router
Okay.
and hopefully, if that'll work, if you have time.
I have about I would say 30 more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's give me about a minute here to see if this will come back on.
Sure.
And if not, we can adjust.
Yeah.
We're
So my friend's husband went to receive a few sessions of rapid resolution therapy. And the reason why in both modalities there's the word rapid on the front end is because it is different than talk therapy in that often 1 to 3 sessions is really all you need because we're just rewiring a subconscious belief that our subconscious mind has been operating on and upgrading the software essentially.
Yeah.
And once the software is upgraded, everything else kind of works itself out. So she had a husband who was struggling with a lot of complications of PTSD, and he, I believe in 3 sessions, had it completely eradicated. I have another friend who I didn't meet until several years later, whose husband also, I mean, her husband was sex trafficked by his own family as a child.
Oh my God.
And same thing, like massive complications of complex PTSD that permeated their whole lives. And I think 3 sessions and with
Wow.
total transformation. As it relates to what my husband was experiencing, we thought, oh, well, this could be a modality that may really work for us. And then, of course, I was already doing a lot of the subconscious reframing in my own work. I just didn't know what it was. But
Okay.
it was a natural skill that I had because apparently I see the world very differently than most people.
Right.
And I am often very good at helping people understand from a 30,000-foot context what's really going on, when sometimes they're really like this.
Yep.
And so in the work that I was doing with my artist clients, I was just finding that I was creating a lot of unintentional reframes just by virtue of doing my job. And so between me already kind of playing in that space and us looking for something for my husband to treat what we thought was PTSD, um,
Mm.
that was how I came across it and why I decided to get certified in it, because I wanted to be able to have an evidence-based framework that
Yeah.
I was educated in, so I felt a little bit more like I could create results for someone rather than just kind of flying blind in my own sense of what I intuitively think,
Sure.
I should
I
do for
got
the client.
Yeah.
Um, so that was what ultimately led me to certifying in that modality. And then the last 4 years have been a wacky 4 years, but I've been because of that, and because I've stepped away from doing 90% of my business with artists, I really was in a season where I was like, okay, what's next for me, universe? I'm not really sure where I fit in anymore. And interestingly enough, the woman that I said I met several years later, whose husband was trafficked by his family, she and her husband both got certified in the modality. And through some conversations with her, I decided I need to go back and get further certification. Uh,
Okay.
and so that was what led me to rapid transformational therapy. And so, yeah, here we are now. But I love it.
What
I love the work.
what is the difference between the two?
It's, it's just a difference in approach. I mean,
Okay.
rapid resolution therapy and rapid transformational therapy both have roots in hypnosis, which I think freaks a lot of people out, but it
Yeah.
really isn't. You're getting very sleepy and I'm
Right.
going to
Right.
control your mind.
Yeah.
The participant is always in control, always.
Hmm.
And most people are freaked out because they just don't really fundamentally understand how the mind works. And we hear a lot of weird stories. And so we think, oh, there's a part of my mind that I'm not in control of necessarily, and people can infiltrate it. And I don't believe that. But both of them have a way of utilizing hypnotherapy to create rapid transformation in the mind's set of beliefs.
Yeah.
Resolution therapy is a little more conversational in its approach, although it can employ a true induction where someone does go into a relaxed state. Whereas
Hmm.
rapid transformational therapy uses that every time and uses some different tools once someone is under that relaxed state to help them identify the root cause of their beliefs and then work to transform them. Another key difference is that rapid resolution therapy is the session that you're in is the session that you're in, whereas rapid transformational therapy also pulls from the idea that it takes between 10 and 21 days for a new habit to form. And so
Okay.
you'll do a session with a participant You'll record a transformation recording with new updated suggestions, and then that participant listens to it for the next 21 days until you see them again if you do more than one session. So there's a
Got it.
little more support in between. But at the end of the day, like, it's both hypnotherapy. It's just a little bit of a different philosophical approach and some different tools.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for describing that distinctively for the audience. This is a perfect time for me to bring back that story with my grandfather,
Yeah.
about how transformational that was and how he has been for me. I had a friend at this point in time, after, again, this is after many years of therapy, many years of cognitive therapy, psychotherapy, art therapy, EMDR therapy, all of the aboves. Um, I had a friend who was in, her main focus is early childhood development, but she was also psychic.
Mhm.
Now, we know from both our backgrounds that not supposed to mess with that
Yeah.
because that's witchcraft and all
Yeah.
of those things.
Yeah.
And so she was always drawn to me in a way where she just wanted to be around. Like it wasn't anything really more than that. She just wanted to be around. And eventually I was like, do a reading for me. And she'd be, no, you're not ready. And I asked her again, do a reading for me. No, you're not ready. And finally, I was like, if you say you can do this, then I want to know what it is. So either give me a reading or quit telling me that you can do all this stuff. She's like, okay. So she got herself centered. She started giving me some information and she started describing this event that myself and my grandfather experienced after working out in the field one day in East Tennessee. And it was a hot day. We were mowing hay, getting it ready to bale. And we just decided we were going to go to town afterwards and get some to cool off.
Yeah.
She's describing in detail this event to me. Now, we never told anybody we did this. We didn't go back to the house and tell my grandma. We didn't go back to the house and tell my mom. It was just our thing, something that we did. And this goes into your perception of who my grandfather was. He wasn't the traditional Southern
Yeah.
Baptist minister.
Yeah.
And so she's describing this in details that nobody would know. You couldn't pick that detail out in today's world either, because it was just two different frames of time. A lot of different things have happened over the years. And as she gets to a point of where it's complete realization on my part of who this is, I start bawling. I'm like, this is my grandfather you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then she got clarity. Okay, yes. Now I'm even more connected to this message that I'm supposed to give you. And he literally conveyed to her that everything that I knew and perceived as a little kid, as the extra sensory stuff that I was picking up on, he said it was all real. And so you don't have to continue to feel like it was something to disbelieve in. It was real. Like all your perceptions were valid. They weren't something that you need to continue to hide. And to give you some clarification on that, when I was probably 3, 4 years old, I could see spirits.
Mhm.
And the house that we lived in, there was these 4 spirits that would come to me all the time.
Wow.
One of them was a little bit more of a harsher energy, but the other was an adult female and then a boy and a girl child. And then the adult male was, I believe, was her father at that point. So it was a family grouping that would come to me all the time. And so he was conveying to me that, yes, that was real. Those things take place. That happens. He goes, and I want you to realize too that I love you. I've always loved you. I'm still with you, even. and that you can connect with me at any point in time you want to. You just have to tap in.
Yeah.
For me, that pivotal moment of my grandfather, the Southern Baptist minister, bringing me a message through a psychic medium
Right.
who completely blows the whole context out of everything that we've been taught growing up out of the water.
Yeah.
Opened my mind and eyes to the possibilities of other modalities of healing and therapies.
Yeah.
Fast forward about 5 years, and I was on a webinar, a highly sensitive entrepreneurs webinar. And there was this lady who's from St. Augustine, Florida, on the webinar. She was talking about how she was struggling with her branding and stuff like that in her business with the person who was doing the webinar. I was talking about my frustrations with doing everything I've done in business, and now I'm at this transition point and I don't know how to move forward. So after that, I reached out to her and I said, hey, I can probably help you with your branding and your website, different things like that. She's like, oh, that's fantastic. I thought that might be the case in that webinar, and I believe I can help you as well. And I'm like, oh, fantastic. So we got on a call, and she's an intuitive healer. And for the audience who may not understand what that is, it's kind of like an intuitive, a medical intuitive, where
Yeah.
a lot of times doctors who can't figure out what's happening with an individual, they'll call in a medical intuitive, and that person can tap into the individual's energy field and help locate where there's a disturbances or something that's wrong. And that is a documented thing. There are medical intuitives that have been documented over many, many years. It's a real thing. People may not believe it because they say it's intuitive, but it's a real thing. And so this lady is, from my perspective, she doesn't portray herself as a medical intuitive, but from my perspective, that's the easiest way to describe her, because she can tap in immediately and just go straight to the origin of a trauma, a wound, a hurt, something that has created disturbance in your life over the years.
Yeah.
And so I've been working with her now for 8 years, and she's changed my life dramatically compared to 25 plus years of psychotherapy. Her name's Marilyn Edwards, St. Augustine, Florida.
Okay.
Another interesting component of us having this conversation.
Yeah.
But she's phenomenal. And the potential for healing based on these modalities that are not mainstream word of mouth, everything you hear every day, or everything that you see on TV every day with an ad for another medication, that type of stuff. They're very much possibilities for people who have experienced trauma, even creatives who have just experienced difficult things throughout life that have imprinted and stayed with them for many, many years. The opportunity to come to a place of healing, of resolution, of transformation, it's there, it's available. And hopefully through this conversation that you and I have had today, one creative to another, and also tapping into those wounds that have been experienced early on because of our environmental circumstances and stuff that we were placed in that framed how we thought as little kids, is now something that is transcending all of that.
Yeah. I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So with that, I think it's a fantastic place for us to close out today. And one of the things that I always want to remind the audience at the end of each one of these sessions and episodes that I do with other creatives is to, and this is absolutely evident in Lindsey's story today, is always listen to your heart, but as well, be kind to your mind.
I concur.